The crystalline chambers of Station Prime floated in the darkness of space like a jewel,
matching the light of 1,000 distant stars.
Inside those chambers, the Galactic Council gathered for what they believed would be a simple matter. 47 different species had sent their representatives, each one sitting in specially designed seats that accommodated their unique bodies. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and a few existed as pure energy contained in magnetic fields. But despite their differences, they all agreed on one thing. The humans had become a problem. Zarthix stood at the center of the chamber, his towering form casting shadows across the polished floor. He belonged to the Volthri collective, a species that had ruled their corner of the galaxy for thousands of years before joining the Council. His skin shimmered with colors that humans might compare to oil on water, and his 4 eyes scanned the assembled delegates with cold precision. Today he spoke not just as a council member, but as the speaker, the one chosen to voice the will of the majority. He activated the holographic display with a gesture of his 3-fingered hand. The image of Earth appeared above the chamber floor, rotating slowly. Blue oceans covered most of the surface, with green and brown continents scattered across them. White clouds swirled in patterns that made the planet look almost peaceful. Almost innocent, the humans have ignored 3 official warnings. Zarthix let his words hang in the air for a moment. They continue to expand beyond the boundaries we assign to them. They refuse to accept the technological restrictions that every other young species has accepted. They ask too many questions. They explore too aggressively. They do not understand their place in the galactic order. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. A delegate from the Kryn Empire, a being with 6 arms and a body covered in chitinous plates, clicked its mandibles in approval. Another representative, this one from a species that looked like a floating mass of tentacles, pulsed with colors that translated to strong agreement. We have been patient. Zarthix continued his speech, knowing that every word was being recorded and would be transmitted across the galaxy. We have tried to guide them gently into compliance. But patience has limits. The humans discovered faster than light travel only 30 years ago, yet they act as if they have the same rights as species who have traveled the stars for millennia. This cannot continue. The speaker changed the holographic display to show human ships. They were crude things compared to council vessels, built with welded metal and chemical rockets for maneuvering. But there were many of them, and they kept appearing in places the council had designated as restricted. Human mining operations had spread through their solar system. Human exploration vessels had visited a dozen nearby star systems. Human communication arrays broadcast signals in all directions, announcing their presence to anyone who cared to listen. The solution is simple. Zarthix made another gesture, and the display changed again, this time showing a fleet of warships. We send a compliance force. We give the humans one final chance to accept council authority. If they refuse, we demonstrate the consequences of defiance. We sterilize their homeworld and scatter the survivors across the galaxy as servants. They will learn through suffering what they refuse to learn through reason. The vote took less than a minute. 47 species, unanimous in their decision. The humans would submit, or they would burn. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, Admiral Jacob Kane watched the alien fleet emerge from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. The command center had been built in secret over the past 8 years, carved into solid rock and shielded with technology that made it invisible to almost any scan. Banks of monitors covered every wall, each one showing different data streams. Satellite feeds, telescope images, gravitational sensors, and a dozen other systems all focused on the same thing. 50 alien warships arranged in a perfect geometric pattern, each one broadcasting power signatures that could crack a moon. Jacob stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back. He had served in the military for 32 years, starting as a lieutenant on a submarine and working his way up through skill, dedication, and a talent for seeing patterns that others missed. His hair had gone gray years ago, and his face carried lines that spoke of hard decisions and sleepless nights. But his eyes remained sharp, and his mind sharper. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission." Lieutenant Katie Wells looked up from her console, her fingers still dancing across the holographic controls. The message was broadcast on all frequencies and sent directly to every government on Earth. It appeared simultaneously in English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and 300 other languages. Play it. Jacob kept his voice calm even though his heart hammered in his chest. The message appeared on the main screen. The words were simple and brutal. Earth had 72 hours to surrender all military assets. Dismantle all weapons beyond simple chemical propellants. Accept permanent council observers on every continent. And agree to technological restrictions that would keep humanity trapped in their own solar system for the next 1,000 years. Any refusal would result in what the message politely called corrective action, but what everyone understood meant total destruction. The command center fell silent. Every person in the room knew what those words meant. They had spent years preparing for this moment, years hoping it would never come, but knowing it would. The Galactic Council had done this before 2 other species. Earth had intercepted some of those transmissions, decoded them, and learned the terrible pattern. Any species that developed faster than light travel faced the same choice: submit and stagnate, or resist and die. General Chris Holland broke the silence first. He was a broad-shouldered man with dark skin and darker eyes, someone who had commanded troops in 3 different wars. Before retiring to accept a position in what the public thought was a simple research program, "Well, I suppose we knew this was coming." Jacob nodded slowly. "Send the reply. Tell them we need the full 72 hours to consult with all Earth governments. Be polite. Be respectful. Give them no reason to think we are planning anything except exactly what they expect." Katie typed rapidly, composing a message that struck the perfect balance between submission and buying time. The transmission went out moments later, shooting across space at faster than light speeds through a relay system the Council had helpfully provided years ago, and activate the Hamilton Protocol. Jacob added those words quietly, but everyone in the room heard them clearly. The Hamilton Protocol. Named after a woman who had died 5 years ago, a scientist who had made the discovery that changed everything. The protocol that represented 8 years of secret work, 8 years of preparation, 8 years of humanity learning to do what the Galactic Council believed was impossible across the Earth. Hidden facilities received the signal and began powering up. In orbit, satellites that appeared to be simple communication relays started reconfiguring themselves. On the moon, beneath the crater called Shackleton, machines that had been dormant for 3 million years responded to human commands and hummed to life. In the asteroid belt, mining stations that were actually military outposts brought their weapons online. And beyond Pluto, in the cold darkness of the outer system, ships began to move. The Galactic Council had studied humanity for decades. They had analyzed human broadcasts, intercepted human communications, and sent stealth probes to catalog human technology. They believed they knew exactly what Earth possessed: 200 primitive spacecraft, chemical rockets and early fusion drives, projectile weapons and crude energy beams. Nothing that could threaten even a single Council warship. They were wrong, Jacob. Watch the tactical displays update as the Hamilton Protocol executed its first phase. Green dots appeared across the solar system, each one representing an asset coming online. Weapons platforms, shield generators, ships that had been built in secret using technology that should not exist. Technology that humanity had found purely by accident and had somehow managed to keep hidden from the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, Commander. Carl Griffin entered the command center, still wearing his flight suit from the simulation run he had been conducting. How long until they realize? He did not need to finish the question. Jacob smiled, but there was no humor in it. 72 hours? That is how long they gave us, and that is how long we will take. When the deadline expires, they will get their answer. Just not the answer they expect. Dr. Lisa Morgan looked up from her workstation, her eyes red from staring at screens for too many hours. The calculations are solid. We ran them through every verification system we have. When we drop the stealth fields, they're going to see exactly what we want them to see. Good. Jacob turned to face the room, looking at each person in turn. These men and women represented dozens of nations, hundreds of specialties, and thousands of hours of training. They had volunteered for a mission that might end in their deaths and the deaths of everyone they loved. But they had volunteered anyway, because they understood what was at stake. Every person in this room knows what happens next. The Council expects us to surrender. When we do not, they will attack. We need to be ready. We will be ready. Chris Holland said it with absolute certainty. The next 72 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Earth's governments issued statements calling for calm. News broadcasts showed experts debating whether humanity should accept Council authority or risk destruction. Some argued for submission, pointing out that survival was more important than pride. Others demanded resistance, insisting that freedom was worth any price. Neither side knew the truth, that the decision had already been made and preparations had already been completed in orbit around Earth. The Council fleet waited with the patience of predators who knew their prey had nowhere to run. Zarthix expected many possible responses from the humans during those 72 hours. He expected desperate pleas for mercy. He expected angry defiance followed by quick surrender when reality set in. He expected offers of partial compliance or requests for negotiations. What he did not expect was complete silence. For 71 hours and 59 minutes, Earth went dark. Every communication channel that humanity had been using suddenly carried nothing but static. The human vessels that had been cataloged in the Mars colonies simply vanished from all sensors. The mining operations around Jupiter stopped transmitting their regular status updates. Even the communication satellites orbiting Earth went quiet, as if someone had flipped a switch and turned off an entire civilization. Speaker, this behavior is highly irregular. War Coordinator Thelmora spoke from her position at the tactical station. She belonged to the Kryn Empire and had personally overseen 43 compliance actions during her long career. Her 6 arms worked multiple control interfaces simultaneously, each one trying to gather more information about what the humans were doing. Our intelligence reports indicated they possessed approximately 200 vessels of various sizes. We are now detecting 0 active signatures anywhere in their solar system. Zarthix felt something he had not experienced in centuries. A small flutter of uncertainty in his mid-thorax, where his species processed emotional responses. They are attempting to hide. It is a futile gesture. When the deadline expires, we will simply bombard their planet from orbit. There is nowhere for them to run. But the silence bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Species facing extinction usually made noise. They broadcast final messages. They pleaded for their history to be remembered. They cursed their destroyers or begged for mercy. They did not simply go quiet and wait. The final minute of the deadline ticked away on the chronometer. Thelmora counted down the last 10 seconds with hand signals. A habit from her military training. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Every display screen in the council chamber turned red simultaneously. Not the soft red of a warning indicator, but a bright, aggressive crimson that made several delegates flinch. Then the screens cleared, and a human face appeared. The human was male. Probably in his 5th or 6th decade if council intelligence about human lifespans was correct. His hair had turned the silver-gray color that indicated age in his species. His eyes were a pale blue, and they looked directly into the camera with an expression that Zarthix recognized from 1,000 different species. Calm determination. The human wore a simple military uniform in dark blue, fabric with a small flag patch on one shoulder and a name tag on his chest that read Kane. No medals, no ornaments, nothing to indicate rank, except the bearing of someone who expected to be obeyed. I am Admiral Jacob Kane of the United Earth Defense Force. The human's voice was quiet, but it carried clearly. Through the chamber's audio system, you gave us an ultimatum. We are going to give you a history lesson instead. The display changed to show Earth's moon, that barren gray satellite that orbited the human homeworld. The image zoomed toward the far side, the hemisphere that never faced Earth, and then deeper into a large crater. The view penetrated beneath the lunar surface, revealing a massive structure that made Thelmura's secondary heart skip. Several beats, the structure was clearly artificial. Vast chambers stretched for kilometers beneath the moon's crust, all carved from solid rock with a precision that spoke of technology far beyond anything humans should possess. Machinery filled those chambers, devices that made the Council's most advanced equipment look primitive by comparison. In the year 2031 by the human calendar, our mining operations on the moon discovered something. Jacob Kane's voice continued as the images showed human workers carefully excavating around ancient mechanisms. A facility, not built by humans. Not built recently. We spent 15 years excavating it. 5 more years trying to understand it. The last 8 years preparing for this moment, a human female appeared beside Jacob Kane in the transmission. She wore a white coat over casual clothing, and her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style. Her name tag identified her as Dr. Lisa Morgan. The facility was left by a species you call the predecessors. Lisa Morgan spoke with the calm authority of someone presenting established facts rather than theories. According to the records we found and eventually decoded, they seeded this galaxy with life approximately 3 million years ago. They created the hyperlane network that your ships use for faster-than-light travel. They built the foundational technology that your entire civilization is based upon. Zarthix felt his certainty crumbling. The predecessors were legendary, spoken of in the oldest council records as the mysterious ancients who had left fragments of impossible technology scattered across the galaxy. The council had built its power by controlling access to those fragments, by being the only ones who possessed enough predecessor tech to dominate all other species. But no one had ever found a complete facility. No one had ever claimed to understand predecessor technology fully. They left one last facility. Lisa Morgan continued, and now the display showed chamber after chamber filled with devices that hurt to look at because they bent light in ways that seemed to violate physics. One final gift, and they left very clear instructions. This facility was meant for whoever evolved on Earth. It was meant for humanity. The image shifted again, showing ships under construction in vast underground hangars. The vessels dwarfed anything the Council possessed. Sleek constructions of materials that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Weapons arrays lined their hulls, each one radiating energy signatures that the Council's sensors classified as impossible. For the last 8 years, Jacob Kane resumed speaking. We have been learning, building, preparing for the day we knew would come. The day when the galactic powers would try to crush us before we could threaten their control. Another human appeared in the transmission. A male with broad shoulders and dark skin, wearing a military uniform similar to Kane's. His name tag read Holland. We studied your history. Commander Paul Holland said, every single time a new species develops faster than light travel, you do the same thing. You show up with overwhelming force. You demand submission. You claim it is for galactic peace and stability. But it is really about maintaining your monopoly on advanced technology. About making sure no one can ever challenge the existing power structure. The display changed once more, its time showing the space around the Council fleet. Where sensors had previously detected nothing but empty vacuum, signatures began appearing. 1 contact, then 10, then 50, then 200. Ships materialized out of active stealth fields, surrounding the Council fleet in a perfect sphere. They were the same vessels shown under construction in the earlier images, but now they were complete and operational. Each one broadcast power readings that exceeded the entire Council fleet combined. Thelmura worked her controls frantically, trying to understand how an entire fleet had appeared without any prior detection. The technology required for that kind of stealth was theoretically possible, according to predecessor research. But no one had ever successfully implemented it. We are going to make this very simple. Jacob Kane leaned forward slightly, and his expression hardened. You have 12 hours to withdraw your fleet beyond the orbit of Neptune, the 8th planet in our solar system. If you do not comply, we will consider it an act of war. And I promise you do not want to go to war with humans. The transmission ended abruptly. Leaving the Council chamber in shocked silence, Zarthik stared at the empty screens, his mind struggling to process what he had just witnessed. It was impossible. No species could master predecessor technology in a mere 8 years. The Council had spent 12,000 years studying the fragments they possessed, and they still understood only a fraction of how those devices worked. But the ships were real. The power signatures were real. And the threat was very real. Speaker, we should verify their capabilities before taking action, Thelmora said carefully. Those vessels could be elaborate fakes designed to intimidate us into retreat. Zarthix knew she was right to be cautious, but he also knew that showing any sign of weakness would undermine the Council's authority across the entire galaxy. If word spread that humans had forced the Council to back down, every subjugated species would start questioning their own compliance. No, Zar. Thix made his decision based on 12,000 years of Council policy, and the absolute certainty that no upstart species could truly threaten the established order. They are bluffing. Even if they found genuine predecessor technology, they cannot possibly have learned to use it effectively in such a show. Our tea time. We will call their bluff. All ships, open fire. Thelmora hesitated for just a moment, her tactical experience warning her that this was a mistake. But she was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. All ships, you are authorized to engage. Target the human vessels. Fire at will. The Council fleet opened fire with every weapon system they possessed. Plasma lances that could melt through starship hulls. Graviton beams that could tear apart molecular bonds. Quantum torpedoes that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Enough destructive power to sterilize a continent. All focused on the human ships. The human vessels did not attempt to dodge. They simply activated their defensive systems. Reality twisted around each human ship as defensive fields snapped into existence. The Council weapons struck those fields and simply ceased to exist. The energy did not explode or dissipate or reflect back. It just stopped being erased from existence by technology that treated physics as a polite suggestion rather than an absolute law. On the bridge of the UED's Artemis, Captain Ryan Mitchell watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Captain. Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UEDS. Artemis had watched the Council's weapons disappear. Against his ship's shields like raindrops hitting an invisible wall, the defensive fields worked exactly as the simulations had predicted, bending space-time itself to create a barrier that made incoming attacks simply cease to exist before they could reach the hull. Around him, his crew worked their stations with practiced efficiency, their faces showing concentration rather than fear. All ships reporting shields holding at full strength. Lieutenant Sarah Walsh called out from the communications station, "No damage to any vessel in the fleet." Ryan nodded once, his hands clasped behind his back in a pose he had unconsciously copied from Admiral Kane during their years of training together. He was younger than Kane by 15 years, but he had earned his position through skill and an almost supernatural ability to stay calm under pressure. His brown eyes tracked the tactical display as the Council fleet continued its futile bombardment. The Council ships fired again, pouring more energy into their attack. Plasma lances carved bright lines across the darkness of space. Graviton beams created visible distortions in the fabric of reality itself. Quantum torpedoes phased in and out of normal space as they approached their targets. It was the kind of firepower that could crack a planet's crust or vaporize a moon. The human shields absorbed everything without even flickering. After 47 seconds of continuous fire, the Council fleet finally stopped. Ryan could imagine the confusion and growing panic on those alien bridges as their commanders tried to understand what they were facing. Every weapon in their arsenal had failed. Every attack had been neutralized. They had just encountered something that should not exist according to everything they knew about warfare and technology. "Open a channel to all ships," Ryan said quietly. "Authorization code Mitchell Alpha 77. Sarah's fingers danced across her console. "Channel open, sir. All human vessels receiving. All ships. This is Captain Mitchell." Ryan kept his voice level and professional. "Return fire. Precision strikes only. Target their weapon arrays and engine systems. We are not here to kill anyone today. We are here to prove a point. Disable them. 200 human vessels opened fire simultaneously. But they did not use the kinds of weapons the Council expected. No plasma, no missiles, no explosive projectiles. Instead, they unleashed focused pulses of gravitational force. Invisible waves of bent space-time that struck the Council ships with surgical precision. The effect was immediate and devastating. Weapon turrets tore away from their mountings as if grabbed by invisible hands. Engine nacelles crumpled like paper. Shield generators exploded as the gravitational forces overwhelmed their containment fields. In less than 1 minute, the entire Council fleet went from a powerful military force to a collection of crippled hulks, drifting helplessly in space. Ryan watched the tactical display update as each Council ship was systematically disabled. The human weapons had been calibrated to cause maximum damage to equipment, while minimizing the risk to the crews inside. It was a delicate balance, requiring precise control and perfect coordination across the entire fleet. All Council vessels have been neutralized. Sarah reported. No human casualties? Scanning their hulls now? She paused, checking the data flowing across her screen. Sir, their life support systems are all intact. We did not breach any of their crew compartments. Good. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. Send the package to Admiral Kane. Let him know we are ready for Phase 2. Back on Earth. In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Jacob Kane watched the battle unfold on the main display. The entire engagement had lasted less than 2 minutes from first shot to complete Council defeat. It was the most one-sided naval battle in human history, and possibly in galactic history as well. Phase 1 complete. Chris Holland said from his position at the tactical station. Not a single human ship damaged. Council fleet completely disabled. No reported fatalities on either side. Jacob nodded slowly, feeling the weight of what they had just done settle on his shoulders. They had just defeated the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. They had proven that humanity possessed technology that made the Council's weapons obsolete. And they had done it without killing anyone, which was important for what came next. Open a channel, Jacob said. Broadcast to every Council ship and back to Station Prime. Maximum priority. I want every member of the Council to see this. Katie Wells worked her console, establishing the communication link. Channel open, Admiral. You are broadcasting on all frequencies. Jacob stepped in front of the camera, straightening his uniform. He had practiced this speech 100 times, refining every word until it carried exactly the message he wanted to send. This is Admiral Jacob Kane to all Council forces. Jacob began, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. We just disabled 50 warships in under 1 minute. We could have destroyed them. We could have killed everyone aboard. We chose not to. I want you to think very carefully about what that means. On Station Prime. Zarthik stared at his display screen in stunned disbelief. The tactical reports were clear and undeniable. His fleet had been completely neutralized without inflicting even minor damage on a single human vessel. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was terrifying. Dr. Lisa Morgan appeared on the transmission beside Jacob Kane, her expression serious but not hostile. She held a data tablet in her hands and referred to it as she spoke. The predecessors did not just leave us ships and weapons. Lisa said they left us complete understanding of quantum field manipulation, full mastery over gravitational forces, the ability to tap directly into zero-point energy, the fundamental power that exists in every cubic centimeter of space. In 8 years, we have advanced further than your entire civilization has in 12,000 years. General Chris Holland joined the transmission. Standing on Jacob's other side, his presence added weight to the message, showing that this was not just one man's decision, but represented Earth's unified military command. Here's what happens next, Chris said, his deep voice carrying clearly through the audio system. You are going to recall every Council fleet to your core territories. You are going to leave human space alone. And you are going to renegotiate the entire galactic order because it is built on a lie. What lie? Thelmora asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She had already accepted that her career was over. No military commanders survived to defeat this total, but she needed to understand what had happened. The lie that you are in charge because you are superior. Chris replied, You were in charge because you found just enough predecessor technology to dominate everyone else. Then you made sure no one else could rise to challenge you. You created artificial scarcity. You enforced technological ceilings. You crushed any species that showed promise. That ends today. Jacob leaned forward slightly, his eyes seeming to look directly at Zarthix, even though they were separated by light years of space. We are not your enemies. We do not want to conquer you. We have no interest in ruling the galaxy. But we absolutely refuse to be conquered or controlled. Earth is sovereign. Humanity is free. And we are going to make sure every other species in this galaxy has the same choice. Commander Paul Griffin appeared in the transmission, his expression neutral, but his words carrying enormous implications. We have already begun transmitting data to every species in the known galaxy. The locations of 17 other predecessor facilities that the Council has been hiding. The ones you claimed did not exist. The ones you kept secret to maintain your technological advantage. Lisa looked directly into the camera. In 6 months, dozens of species will have access to the same capabilities we possess. In a year, maybe 100 species. Your monopoly on advanced technology is over. The question now is whether we move forward peacefully or whether you force us to tear down the old order through conflict. The transmission paused, letting those words sink in. On Station Prime, delegates from 47 species sat in shocked silence. Some of them were already calculating how this would affect their positions. Others were trying to determine if their home governance would see this as an opportunity or a threat. A few were simply trying to process the fact that their entire understanding of galactic power had just been shattered. Speaker Zarthix, you have a choice to make, Jacob said quietly. You can accept that the galaxy has changed and work with us to build something better. Or you can fight us and watch as your civilization crumbles while younger species rise to replace you. We would prefer cooperation, but we are prepared for either option. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in silence. Zarthix looked around at the other delegates. He saw fear in some faces, anger in others, and calculation in the rest. The council had ruled through strength for 12,000 years. Now that strength had been proven insufficient. Everything had changed in the span of a few minutes. Thelmora waited for orders, her 6 arms poised over her controls. She expected Zarthix to call for reinforcements, to demand that the entire council military mobilize against this human threat. She expected rage and defiance and a refusal to accept defeat. Instead, Zarthix did something that surprised everyone in the chamber. He took a long breath, straightened his posture, and spoke to words that would echo through galactic history. We accept 3. Months passed between the day the council fleet limped home and the day that representatives from 143 species gathered at a place humanity had built specifically for this moment. The station floated in neutral space, orbiting a beautiful blue star that belonged to no one and threatened no one. Humans called it Haven, and the name fit perfectly. The station was massive, easily 10 times the size of Station Prime, but where the council's headquarters had been designed to intimidate with its crystalline towers and imposing architecture, Haven was built to welcome. Gardens grew under artificial sunlight in sections designed for species that breathed oxygen. Methane chambers provided comfortable environments for those who needed different atmospheres. Energy beings had spaces with specially tuned magnetic fields. Water dwellers had entire sections filled with liquid environments. Every species that had accepted the invitation to attend found spaces designed specifically for their comfort. Admiral Jacob Kane stood in the main conference hall watching delegates arrive through various entrances. Some walked on legs. Others floated. A few rolled or slithered or moved in ways that human eyes struggled to follow. But despite their incredible diversity, they all shared one thing in common. They were here because the old order had failed them. This is either going to work, or it will be a complete disaster. Dr. Lisa Morgan stood beside Jacob, reviewing notes on her tablet. There is no middle ground here. Then we better make sure it works. Jacob replied quietly. General Chris Holland entered through a side door, followed by Captain Ryan Mitchell and Commander Paul Griffin. The delegates from the Outer Rim species have arrived, Chris reported. They are nervous but grateful. Apparently 6 of them have already located the predecessor facilities we told them about. Good, Jacob said. The more species that gain access to advanced technology, the harder it becomes for anyone to maintain. Control through force alone, the conference hall filled slowly over the course of an hour. Delegates took their assigned seats, which had been carefully arranged to avoid placing traditional enemies too close together, while also preventing the formation of obvious power blocks. Translators worked overtime to convert hundreds of different languages into formats everyone could understand. The air filled with sounds ranging from melodic whistles to grinding mechanical noises to pure electronic tones. Finally, when everyone had settled, Zarthix rose to speak. The former Speaker of the Council had lost much of his political power in the 3 months since the failed attack on Earth, but he still commanded respect from many species. His 4 eyes swept the chamber slowly before he began. We gather here because the old ways have failed. Zarthix spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. For 12,000 years, the Galactic Council maintained order through strength and control. We told ourselves this was necessary. We believed we were preventing chaos. We were wrong. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably, not ready to hear such admissions from someone who had once held ultimate authority. The Council kept species weak, not to protect them, but to protect ourselves. Zarthix continued. We hoarded predecessor technology. We enforced arbitrary limits. We crushed those who showed too much promise or asked too many questions. We created a galaxy where innovation was punished and stagnation was rewarded. This cannot continue. Jacob stood and moved to the center of the chamber. His simple military uniform contrasted sharply with the elaborate garments and biological displays many delegates wore, but his presence commanded attention nonetheless. Speaker Zarthix is correct, Jacob said. The old system was built on inequality and maintained through fear. Humanity proposes something different, not a council of the powerful ruling over the weak, but a true federation of equals. Lieutenant Katie Wells activated the holographic display system, which projected an image of the galaxy above the chamber floor. Hundreds of star systems glowed in various colors, cade in different species, territories, and areas of influence. Every species gets access to predecessor knowledge, Katie said, working the controls to highlight the locations of known facilities. Every species gets a vote in matters that affect the galaxy. Every species gets to determine its own future without interference from others. A delegate from the Volthari Collective, one of Zarthix's own species, rose to object. This will lead to chaos. If every minor species builds war fleets and develops advanced weapons, there will be constant conflict. The galaxy will tear itself apart. Dr. Lisa Morgan smiled patiently. That assumption is based on flawed logic. You assume conflict because that is how the Council maintained power, through artificial scarcity, through competition for limited resources. But species that have their needs met do not go to war. Species that are treated as equals do not rebel. Commander Paul Griffin brought up new data on the holographic display, showing 12,000 years of recorded galactic history. We analyzed your own records. Do you know how many wars were fought between full Council member species in all that time? 0. Do you know how many rebellions were crushed in territories you controlled? 4,733. The violence in this galaxy does not come from equality. It comes from oppression. The hall erupted in debate. Species that had suffered under Council restrictions spoke up, their voices carrying years of frustration and anger. Species that had benefited from the old order defended it, arguing that stability required hierarchy. Arguments flew back and forth in dozens of languages, creating a cacophony of sound that threatened to overwhelm the translation systems. Jacob let it continue for exactly 30 minutes. Then he activated a carefully calibrated gravitational pulse that silenced every voice in the chamber without causing harm to anyone. The sudden quiet was startling enough, Jacob said, his voice carrying to every corner despite speaking normally. We are not asking for permission. Earth is moving forward with this plan, regardless of what you decide here. We are sharing predecessor technology with every species that wants it. We are establishing trade routes and cultural exchanges. We are offering defense packs to anyone interested. The old order is finished, whether you accept it or not. He paused, letting his words settle over the assembled delegates. But we would rather do this with you than against you. Jacob continued. Speaker Zarthix, your people have 12,000 years of experience in governance. The Kryn Empire has unmatched skill in logistics and organization. The Taurian cluster has produced some of the finest philosophers in the galaxy. We do not want to destroy what you have built. We want to transform it into something better. General Chris Holland stepped forward. Here is our specific proposal. A constitutional convention lasting 1 full year. Representatives from every species work together to draft a new galactic charter. One that guarantees sovereignty for all. One that promotes cooperation instead of competition. One that ensures no single species or group can dominate the others. And if we refuse, Zarthix asked quietly, Captain Ryan Mitchell answered, then humanity and our allies form our own federation. We continue sharing predecessor technology. We continue offering alternatives to council authority. Species will choose. Some will stay with the council. Many will join us. In 10 years, your influence will be greatly diminished. In 20 years, you will be irrelevant. A delegate from a small species that had been denied FTL technology for 600 years stood up. Its body was covered in soft fur, and it spoke. Through a translation device that converted its chirps into standard galactic language. Why should we trust humans? You have power now. What stops you from becoming exactly what the council was? Jacob turned to face the delegate directly. Nothing stops us except our own choices. Power corrupts. We know that. That is exactly why we are proposing a system of checks and balances. Why we are insisting on equal votes for all species. Why we are building this on cooperation instead of control, Lisa added her voice. We are not perfect. Humanity has made terrible mistakes throughout our history. We have fought wars over resources and ideology and simple misunderstanding. But we have also learned. We have yield democracies. We have created systems where power is distributed and monitored. We know how to prevent tyranny because we have experienced it ourselves. The chamber fell silent again. This time it was a thoughtful quiet rather than a shocked one. Delegates looked at each other, calculating odds and considering possibilities. Some had already decided. Others needed more information. A few remained stubbornly opposed to any change. Zarthix stood once more. His posture had changed subtly, no longer carrying the absolute confidence of someone who expected to be obeyed without question. He looked older somehow, worn down by the weight of knowing his entire civilization had been built on foundations of sand. The Volthari collective will participate in this constitutional convention, Zarthix said. We will work in good faith to create something better than what we had. This is our commitment. Other delegates began standing one by one. The Kryn Empire, the Taurian cluster, species from the Outer Rim, even some that had been loyal council members for thousands of years. Not everyone agreed. Some walked out in protest, but enough remained to make the effort viable. Jacob looked around the chamber at the beings who had chosen to stay. 1 year, said. 1 year to build a new future. Let us make it count. The Constitutional Convention was supposed to last 1 year, but it stretched to 14 months. There were walkouts and heated arguments and moments when the whole thing seemed ready to collapse. Delegates shouted at each other across the conference hall. Old grievances surfaced between species that had not spoken directly in centuries. 3 times major delegations threatened to leave permanently. But each time, someone found a way to bring them back to the table. Admiral Jacob Kane spent those 14 months traveling between Earth and Haven, coordinating with human diplomats and military leaders, while also meeting privately with delegates who needed reassurance or clarification. He slept for hours a night if he was lucky. His hair went from gray to white. The lines on his face deepened. But his eyes never lost their focus. Dr. Lisa Morgan worked with scientific delegations from 40 different species, helping them understand the predecessor technology that humanity was sharing freely. She discovered that teaching was harder than learning, especially when some species had biological structures that made certain concepts nearly impossible to grasp. But she persisted, finding new ways to explain quantum mechanics to beings. His brains processed reality in fundamentally different ways. General Chris Holland coordinated security for the convention, which meant preventing sabotage from extremist groups on both sides. Some believed humans were giving away too much. Others thought the old council species were being treated too gently. He stopped 6 attempted attacks during those 14 months. Though most people never knew how close they came to disaster, on a spring morning by Earth's calendar, with Haven's blue sun casting gentle light through the conference hall's transparent dome, delegates from 143 species gathered for the final ceremony. The Galactic Federation Charter had been written, debated, revised, and voted upon. Now it needed only signatures to become reality. The charter itself was a marvel of compromise and cooperation. It guaranteed that every species controlled its own territory without interference. It ensured that all species had equal access to predecessor technology and knowledge. It established that every species had one vote in Federation matters regardless of size or power. It created protocols for dispute resolution that did not involve weapons. It set up systems for mutual defense against external threats. It mandated cultural exchanges and scientific cooperation. It was not perfect, but it was fair. Zarthix was among the first to sign, his 3-fingered hand leaving a distinctive mark on the document. The former speaker had changed during those 14 months. He spoke less and listened more. He admitted mistakes openly. He worked harder than delegates half his age to find solutions that benefited everyone rather than just his own species. Jacob signed on behalf of Earth, signature simple and clear. He thought about all the people who had made this moment possible. The scientists who had decoded predecessor knowledge, the engineers who had built ships and weapons, the diplomats who had negotiated through crisis after crisis, the ordinary humans who had trusted their leaders to make the right choices. The signing ceremony took 3 hours because each delegate wanted to speak briefly about what the charter meant to their people. Some speeches were hopeful. Others were cautious. A few were still skeptical that this new system would work better than the old one. But they all signed when the last signature was recorded. The hall erupted in sounds that ranged from cheers to musical tones to electrical buzzing. Species celebrated in their own ways, creating a symphony of joy that the translation systems did not even try to convert into a single language. 6 months after the signing, Dr. Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of a joint exploration vessel watching a view screen that showed their destination. The ship was crewed by humans, Voltheri, Kryn, and a dozen other species working together. They had just arrived at a star system that contained another predecessor facility, one that had been hidden for millions of years. The facility was different from the one humanity had found on the moon. This one was built into an asteroid, and it contained something far more valuable than weapons or ships. The central chamber held a massive data storage system, still functioning after 3 million years. When Lisa's team finally accessed it, they discovered a complete archive of predecessor history, philosophy, and knowledge. Lisa spent weeks translating the core message, working with alien linguists who brought perspectives she would never have considered alone. When they finally decoded the central file, she requested a special session of the Federation Assembly to present their findings. The Assembly met on Haven in a chamber that had been expanded to accommodate representatives from the rapidly growing Federation. New species joined every month as word spread about the new galactic order. Lisa stood at the center and activated a holographic display that showed the predecessor message. They knew they were dying, Lisa explained, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was sharing. Their sun was collapsing into a black hole, and they did not have time to evacuate their entire civilization. So they made a choice. They would seed the galaxy with the genetic building blocks of life. They would leave behind technology and knowledge and hidden facilities. And they would trust that whoever eventually evolved would find these gifts and use them wisely. Captain Ryan Mitchell, who had been promoted to admiral and now commanded the Federation's Joint Defense Forces, leaned forward in his seat. Did they leave specific instructions for us? What did they want us to do? Lisa smiled and pulled up the final section of the message. They left one instruction. She read the translation aloud, her voice carrying to every delegate. Intelligence alone is not special. The galaxy will eventually fill with intelligent species. What matters is what you choose to do with that intelligence. Whether you use it to dominate or to cooperate, to destroy or to build, to hoard or to share. We gave you the stars and the tools to explore them. What you make of this gift is entirely your choice. Choose wisely. Choose kindness. Choose together. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed those words. A message sent across 3 million years by beings who had faced their own extinction and chose to leave hope rather than warnings. Commander? Paul Griffin broke the silence with a quiet laugh. So they were testing us the whole time. Seeing if we would fight over their gifts or share them. Not testing. Jacob corrected gently. Hoping. They hoped we would be better than they were. That we would learn from their example, Lieutenant Katie Wells brought up. A new star chart showing the Federation's territory. In just 2 years, it had grown to include territories that had once been divided among dozens of competing powers. 17 new species had joined in the last month alone. The old barriers were falling, and something entirely new was rising in their place. On Earth, in a small park in Colorado, former General Chris Holland walked with his granddaughter. She was 6 years old with bright, curious eyes and an endless stream of questions. Today she wanted to know about aliens. Grandpa, is it true you met aliens? She asked, holding his hand as they walked along a path lined with autumn trees. Chris smiled. Yes, sweetie. I have met hundreds of different species from all over the galaxy. Are they scary? Some of them look different from us, Chris admitted. But different does not mean scary. Most of them are just like us in the ways that matter. They love their families. They want to learn new things. They want to make the galaxy a better place for their children. She thought about that for a moment, her face serious. Did you help make it better? Chris knelt down to look her in the eyes. I tried. A lot of people tried together. And we are still trying. Making things better is not something you do once and then stop. It is something you keep doing every single day for your whole life. That sounds hard. It is. Chris agreed. But it is also the most important thing anyone can do. High above Earth, the UED's Artemis prepared for another mission. Captain Sarah Walsh, who had taken command when Ryan Mitchell was promoted, stood on the bridge looking at her crew. They represented 8 different species working together seamlessly. Vol3 engineers monitored the engines. Kryn navigators plotted the course. Taurian scientists prepared their instruments. Human technicians worked alongside beings whose ancestors had been enemies just 2 years ago. All stations report ready. Lieutenant Danny Carter announced from his position at communications. Then let us see what is waiting out there, Sarah said with a smile. Engage hyperdrive. The ship leaped forward into faster-than-light travel, its mixed crew heading toward unexplored regions of space. Behind it, hundreds of other vessels did the same, each one carrying explorers and scientists and dreamers from a dozen. Different worlds, the Galactic Council had believed they controlled everything. They had believed the old order would last forever. They had believed that humanity would either submit or burn. They had been wrong about all of it. Earth had not replied with conquest or revenge. Instead, humanity had offered a vision of something better. A galaxy where species cooperated instead of competing. Where knowledge was shared instead of hoarded. Where strength came from unity instead of domination. Admiral Jacob Kane stood in his office on Haven, looking out at the stars through a wide window. He was 73 years old now and thinking about retirement. But not yet. There was still work to do. Dr. Lisa Morgan entered without knocking, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Jacob and stood beside him at the window. "Do you think it will last?" she asked quietly. "This Federation we built," Jacob considered the question carefully. "Nothing lasts forever. Someday this system will need to change too. But we built it on better foundations than the Council did. We built it on choice and equality and mutual respect. That gives it a fighting chance." They stood in silence for a moment, watching ships come and go from Haven's docking bays. Vessels from 100 different worlds, all moving freely through space that had once been restricted and controlled. The predecessors would be proud. Lisa said. Jacob nodded. "I hope so. They gave us an incredible gift. The least we can do is use it to build something worthy of their sacrifice." The galaxy was vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. There would be challenges ahead, disagreements and conflicts and moments of doubt. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy faced those challenges together as equals, rather than as rulers and subjects. The Galactic Council had believed they controlled everything, but humanity had taught the galaxy a better way. True power did not come from control or domination. It came from freedom and cooperation, and the simple choice to lift others up instead of holding them down. And that choice, made again and again by billions of beings across thousands of worlds, was building something the predecessors had only dreamed of. A galaxy truly united not by force, but by shared hope for a better future. The stars were infinite, and the possibilities endless. And for the first time, the galaxy was ready to explore them together.